Good afternoon. How are you today? Well, it's raining outside, and I'm protecting my phone by sitting here in a warm, comfortable place in my home office. And I'm talking to you about, I think, the things that matter, and I think you may agree. One of the worst things is a rhetorical pirouette that Trump and his legions of corrupt public elected officials have been using for a long time. Maybe the most obvious time was when Trump was trying to extort an investigation of Biden's son because he believed that Biden was his most likely strong candidate for the presidency. And he said that if you just did a few favors for me, namely this investigation, which is a bogus investigation because there wasn't one going on, then, I'll give you the material you need to defend yourself against my handler, Mr. Putin, just across the border, who's already occupied part of your territory. His assistant at the time said publicly that this was a quid pro quo, and it was. And it was a coerced quid pro quo. And when it came down to it, and we were talking about impeachment and other things, you started hearing this defense. Well, he believed it was okay. He believed it. He believed it, so it was okay, which is a little bit like the Nixon corollary. If the president does it, well, then it's the law because he's the president. That is the autocratic view of the presidency, a singular executive in charge of everything, despite the Constitution that has 3 different departments. So how did this work? Well, he believed he was right. Therefore, let us not ask what a reasonable man would do, which is a normal test that you hear at the law, which is, what are the facts? How were they communicated to him? What was his state of mind? What was his intent? Was his conduct reasonably known to be criminal, though you don't have to know the law? Innocence of the law is no defense for wrong acts. So here we have it again now, when it appears that we're closing the doors, the windows, the floor, and the ceiling, ever coming closer to compacting Trump in a place where he should be, a jail cell. But we just don't quite get there because we don't fight in the street. And I'm not talking about fighting low, or I'm talking about the facts. I'm saying when somebody gets up and say, I believe, that's not enough. When Ginny Thomas gets up and says, I believe that this was a fixed election, a fraudulent election, we don't have to accept that. Now, I haven't seen the 5 hours of interviews that she gave, but if somebody didn't challenge that and say, you were talking to these various people and trying to overthrow the government. Oh, no, I wasn't. You weren't. You believed the election was a fraud, and your response was to try to overthrow the government. You did A, B, and C. You talked to potential fraudulent electors to get them to support this notion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But she believed she was okay. And the reason it's got my Irish up is because in the talking heads on the weekend, I heard commentators on MSNBC and elsewhere say, oh yeah, she believes it and more people believe it. That's a problem. People who believe something that is false are a danger to democracy that depends upon an informed electorate of the facts. A nation that expects to be ignorant and free expects what never was and never will be. Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson also believed that we, the people, over time, get it, and we help make the right decisions. As I've said before, as a young man, I didn't really believe that, but I've seen it in my life over the various things that have happened in my life, from Vietnam to Watergate to Iran-Contra, Iran-Gate, to weapons of mass destruction, and certainly now, in big letters, terrible things going on. So who else do we have out there creating false beliefs in facts? So they try to have it both ways. Trump at his Nazi-like rallies goes around saying, do you know that they had an illegal search of my home? They did these terrible things, terrible, terrible. Whereas in court, he refuses to give any evidence to the judge on this fact, and the judge he appointed to the bench in the final days of his office, Judge, I call her Luce Cannon, she said that Trump should be treated differently because he was a president. There are people on the air saying, some believe, not law, some believe that, this executive privilege, couldn't it be shared with the president? No, because only one of those two people is the executive and represents that department. But they're saying that. Why are they saying that? To muddy the waters. And we, the people, we represent ourselves and say foul, and that doesn't make any sense. But where's the Justice Department? The Justice Department is doing the old standby of litigating. Litigating does not preclude you fighting in the public arena, where you may be losing ground and making yourself ineffective because people are spouting a belief and false facts and compromising our ability to lead the nation, to preserve the democracy, not lose it. It was no accident when Benjamin Franklin was asked the question, given the history before him, even in those years, that, do we have a republic, Benjamin? What do you say? You have a republic if you can keep it. We see the manifestations of this sickness, this failure to fight in so many arenas. And we individually have to fight at the ballot box and beforehand with contributions if we can, helping people get to the polls. But we also have to say, whether it's on social media and our conversation with our neighbor over the picket fence or at a school bus where you're leaving your child off, we have to say this is outrageous, as sickening as it is, as tiring as it is, that we have to talk about these things continuously. So McConnell, who is a, quote, ally of Trump, he's resisting the notion of having, this fiat, this dictatorship, this autocracy. And so what do we get? At one of Trump's Hitler-like rallies, he says, "You have a death wish." Now, aren't the implications of that dangerous and threatening? And shouldn't we act upon it? And if I said that about any public servant myself, wouldn't I rightly expect somebody to knock on my door and say, "Were you serious? What were you saying? You better not do that again. Maybe we should take you into custody. What is your history?" But nobody's doing that. Nobody does that to this guy. And the second thing he did, and maybe they both deserve it because lay down with fleas, etc. Trump attacked McConnell's wife, calling her McConnell's China loving wife, Coco Chow. What is wrong with this man? And why do we tolerate it? Why wasn't there a sound in the audience like, oh, do we respect anyone except this thug? This person who couldn't run a casino fairly, this person who cheated in every way possible to, quote, build his empire, which has been exaggerated for many years now. So what do we need? We need a dialogue in the public square that says, when you say belief, that's not the standard. The standard is, do you have the goods? Do you have the facts? Do you have the receipts? It's not that you believe something. I once gave a response to a Republican at I guess an informative proceeding that Ari Melber put together at Cooper Union. And he gave me the last spot. And the Republican got up there and he said, Trump believes. He believes that what he did was right. So I got up and I said how, as a younger parent, I used to sing to my daughter, "I believe I can fly. I believe I can fly right up to the sky." And I stood at the edge of the stage, and I could see the people were anxious that I was at the edge of the stage, and I threw open my arms and I said, "I believe I can leap off into the air. I really believe it." But unlike the Republicans, I'm not delusional. That's the standard. Does it work logically? Is it real? And if it's not, we're just getting more disinformation in order to follow the path of every fascist movement in history so they can take over the government and rule. Not with us, not with we the people, not with the Constitution we have, but as they choose. So tomorrow I'll be out in the elements, I expect, and I'll be able to talk to you then. Have a good day. Bye-bye.